Hello, my name is Jess, and welcome to Dyscalculia Research Revealed, an interview series where I speak with leading researchers in the field of dyscalculia. Together, we'll explore their most recent and prominent research findings and what these discoveries mean for educators, parents, and individuals with dyscalculia. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the excellent Bert De Smedt from the University of Leuven. He will be sharing a snappy overview of his research in dyscalculia, current projects, and future directions. Good morning, Bert. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Jess. I'm doing well, thank you.
Brilliant. Well, it's really great to have you on the series today. So, do you want to just begin with giving us a bit of an introduction about yourself and your research career so far?
Okay. I'm a full professor here at the University of Leuven, and I'm based in the Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences. And my research group is in special parenting and special education. I've been working actually for my entire career in a group where there is lots of research going on learning difficulties, learning disorders, and then, as far as I'm concerned, with a focus on mathematics and dyscalculia. So I think I enrolled here in back in more than 20 years ago. That's already quite some time. And My work has always been focused on how children develop mathematical skills and the individual differences in this acquisition, with a particular focus on mathematics. So I've been studying mathematical cognition in children for a long time. We have run a lot of studies as well in children with learning disorders and children with dyscalculia. Most of the time, this is in primary school, and I would say the last 5, 10 years also in preschool. And in this work, we have been interested in the sort of cognitive factors that play a role in the emergence of dyscalculia and of individual differences, looking at factors that are specific to learning mathematics, like how do we process numbers and how does that develop. So that's one particular area. And then another area has been on cognitive factors that play a role, like working memory, like language, like spatial ability. And one factor I should add there more recently is metacognition, so the ability to think about your own thinking. So these have been the focus of that. And then we have also expanded that to looking at the brain and looking at sort of neurobiological factors that play a role in development and in the emergence of learning disorders. Yeah, that's sort of a summary. Maybe one thing to add is like in throughout this research, I've also always been interested in the connection between mathematics and other areas of learning. And so that's the connection with reading,
Mhm.
because there is some overlap there, both in typical development, but also in atypical development. As sometimes difficulties in reading and maths go together, and so the aim there is to understand why this is happening.
Brilliant. That's like a really great overview, and it seems that you've been involved in maths difficulties and dyscalculia and all that thing, like topic for quite a long time now. So I will move on to my third question because that sort of answered the second one, which was great. So could you tell us maybe a current project that you might be working on, or if there's any recent findings that you'd like to share?
Uh, yeah, sure. Maybe I just wanted to say something briefly personal on the second question on the
Oh yeah.
interest in dyscalculia. So, and that's related to a personal experience. I've been always interested in mathematics and mathematical development, and at some point I figured out the reason why.
Mhm.
When I was at school, in primary school, I've always liked to do mathematics, but I wasn't. I mean, I was always quickly ready with the tasks in mathematics that I had to do. And of course, as a child, what are you doing? Then you start to being annoying and things like that. And at some point, the teacher figured out a very good solution to that. He assigned me a task of explaining the math to other children in the classroom, and I think that's where my interest for maths and maths difficulties is coming from. But that was just a very personal note.
Yeah, sorry,
Uh,
hadn't realized there was a more personal element to that. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
So the current topics, well, there is a variety of projects running. So one topic that we have done a lot of work on is this so-called processing of number, like how do children process numbers, and we have found out that particularly understanding what those numbers means is a very relevant skill to acquire, and is something that children with dyscalculia struggle a lot with. And this understanding of meaning has focused for a long time on understanding the magnitude of numbers, like seeing that three is more than one, for example. But more recently also expands to understanding other properties of number, like understanding their order. So to know that four comes after three, but before five, and understanding this meaning of numbers. Yeah, that's been a central focus of lots of the studies. This is something that develops very early, like in preschool, and that is predictive for yeah, abilities later on. We've also been involved in developing some sort of instruments and screening tools to sort of detect individual differences in this respect already at an early age, because we know that intervening as early as possible is really critical. And these number processing abilities, they are particularly malleable to intervention, and through schooling we have some recent work where um, I will give you two examples. One is a study where we sort of worked together with parents, and we gave them a bunch of activities that were intended to sort of stimulate this processing of number in a very playful and everyday way. So like thinking really about opportunities when going to a shop to talk to your child and say like, we have to buy fruit. How many kilograms do we have to buy? We are with four people in the house, so it means we need to have four pieces of meat, and so on and so forth. So this kind of very informal interactions, but very critical, because they sort of provide a basis for understanding this number. And so these interventions, even only in the short run, seem to be effective. So that's one important element. And then the other important one is that we've been doing some work where we sort of try to analyze to which extent this development of processing number is really something that is driven by environmental experiences, like what you do at home or going to school, for example, or whether it's just a biological process. And the good news is that it is really a process that is driven by environmental experiences, and we have been able. It's a kind of complex design, but to make it easy to get is what we played around with. Is we compare children who basically had sort of a similar age, but because of in Belgium, and I assume you have this in the UK too, there is like a cutoff for school entry. And that's in Belgium, that's January the 1st. And if you're born before that, you end up in a different grade than if you're born after that. And by doing these comparisons, we can sort of disentangle the effect of an environmental factor like schooling on development. And it seems for these number processing abilities that this is really malleable and driven by environmental experiences. And so yeah. And like in other projects, we sort of follow up to which extent this is predictive of dyscalculia and predictive of difficulties in learning. which, I mean, the evidence suggests that it is. So it's really a key mechanism of the difficulties that children with dyscalculia are encountering. And that also means that in terms of interventions, that's the area where the interventions will be the most effective, much more so than in areas related to cognitive factors like working memory, for example. The evidence suggests that this is not the area where what we should target if we want to address the difficulties of children with dyscalculia, because those sort of more general cognitive factors, they're sort of not so easy to
Train.
to train exactly, and also the learning of number and mathematics itself is a powerful working memory exercise, and so you sort of make so much more gains if that is the focus of the intervention as compared to these executive or working memory related trainings.
Brilliant. So that's really great, and it's so exciting to see all these different projects that you've been involved with. So you've sort of briefly touched on this already, but if you could give us maybe like one key application of like what your findings mean for either individuals with dyscalculia or educators, parents, or policy, or maybe like one key takeaway, if you could summarize.
To me, the key takeaway is that the difficulties we see in dyscalculia are specific, and they are specific to understanding numbers and calculations. So that should be the focus of interventions, should also be the focus of assessment. And I think that's where we can really make a difference, and that's really the target we have to aim for if we want to deal with these difficulties.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So I'll go on to my last question today, and that is about gaps in the knowledge at the moment. So what gaps do you think there are, or if there's anything you could advise for future researchers, what should they be looking at?
So I will mention two things, and these are also two sort of larger projects that are going on here in the lab at the moment. The first one is that when I've just talked about dyscalculia, I seem to assume that this is kind of a homogeneous group of individuals, which is likely not to be the case. And so we know from our findings, but I think also from education and clinical practice, that there is a lot of heterogeneity within the group of individuals with dyscalculia. And I think one area to explore or to really figure out is understanding this heterogeneity, trying to get, I mean, it's unlikely that all these individuals will have like the same type of profile. So we need to better understand this variability within the group of individuals with dyscalculia. Just as in the broader population, there is also heterogeneity. So that's something we really need to understand, because it is critical for the interventions that we deliver, because there will not be a one size fit all. So and trying to understand that in more detail will help us to come up with better interventions, I think. So that's one area I think is a relevant one. The other area that to me is important, maybe it's a bit more of a research question, but I think in the end it will have implications for education and practices as well, is to really understand the causes and consequences of dyscalculia, and to really understand the difficulties that we see in individuals with dyscalculia. To which extent are they really the cause of dyscalculia, or to which extent are they a consequence? And this is a question that is particularly critical when we think about the neurobiology of dyscalculia. And as of today, we have a number of studies, and that suggest like, okay, there are differences between those with dyscalculia and those without. But we have no idea whether these differences are the consequence or really the cause of dyscalculia. If we see biology and brain, we immediately think, aha, that must be the cause. But given that our brains are so dynamic and plastic, it is not. It might be not, maybe not the case that what we see in these brain imaging findings is really causal, because one of the important things we have to take into account is that these brain networks, they are built based on experience.
Yeah.
And of course, individuals with dyscalculia, they have a different experience in learning mathematics and in different experiences at school. So I can imagine, and I think you have exactly the same pattern in dyslexia. I can imagine if you're not good at maths, you won't be doing this type of processing in your leisure time, or you won't look for activities that would stimulate that
Yeah.
kind of processing, and this creates sort of a vicious circle. And so there we really need to understand what is really at the cause, and what is really explaining why the difficulties occur. And I think that's a critical question to be answered.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting actually to think of it that way, of what things are the consequence, but what things are actually causing it, sort of. So yeah, that's so interesting. And thank you so much for that. I think our listeners will really benefit from everything that you've shared with us today. And I'm sorry it couldn't be any longer, but yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
So that's the end of the interview. So thank you to everyone who came and listened today. And thank you so much, Bert, for joining us. My name is Jess, and that was Bert De Smedt on Dyscalculia Network's Dyscalculia Research Revealed, an interview series. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.